Welcome to Study Like a Scientist HSC questions, and remember, when you're faced with an HSC question, you've got to read it. So highlight the verbs, understand the science behind it and any keywords in the question, and make sure that you understand what the question is asking you, the intent of the question. Notice any plurals and the number of marks, and plan your response. So remember to use any scientific vocabulary that's relevant. Decide how you're going to attack the question in terms of how you're going to lay out your answer. Make sure that you engage with all of the stimulus and use the stimulus in your response. And this is going to be a stimulus question. And be logical with the way that you lay out your argument. That makes it easy for the examiner to see where your argument goes and give you more marks, and make sure that you check your response at the end to make sure you haven't missed anything important. Now, the question we're going to look at here is quite small, but you're going to need to look at all of this because it's a big stimulus question. You can see that it's worth 7 marks. We'll come to the question itself in a minute, but let's start off by engaging with the stimulus. So we start off, we have a map on this side, which is the national distribution of the mountain pygmy possum. And then we have a table on graph on this side showing changes in the Mount Buller population of possums following recent bushfires. Okay, and following the introduction of male pygmy possums from another area. Now, you might be sitting there thinking, but I haven't done pygmy possums. That's okay. It's unlikely anybody has, and because this is a stimulus question, you can apply your understanding to a new context. So this will be a high-level question. So let's read what we've been given. So the mountain pygmy possum is restricted to 4 regions in Australia's alpine zone. The species is listed as critically endangered with less than 2,000 adults remaining. And the range has contracted due to a gradually warming climate. So we've got the known occurrences of genetically isolated subpopulations. So these are populations that cannot interbreed with each other because they are genetically isolated. So they can't, they're too far away to breed. So loss and degradation of the habitats has affected populations. So that's one reason that we've got, another reason that we've got low populations. And the graph shows changes in Mount Buller's population following recent bushfires and the introduction of male pygmy possums. So that's what this says here. So we've got, I think I got a repeat of that same bit there. So here we've got bushfires happening. So there's a few bushfires. And then we have 2 points at where we introduce 6 new males. There's 2 arrows there. So I was using the key here to work out what was happening. And you can see, if we just have a little think about what's happening here already, every time there's a bushfire, there is a big drop in the population. So each time there's a bushfire, there is a drop in the population. And each time there is an introduction of new males, there are increases in the population. There are some interesting bits here. So at the beginning, in 1996, the population was 90 on Mount Bogong. And at its worst, it got down to about, maybe about 8 individuals there. So at its worst, it was down to about 8 individuals. So hopefully that will give us some information to address our questions. Let's have a look at what question we're being asked to address. It's an evaluate question. So an evaluate means we need to say, was it highly significant? Was it moderately significant? We have to make a judgment on the factors in the question. And we're being asked to look and judge bushfires and, so here's our plurals, and the introductions of males from other locations. And we're asked to look at how they affect, change colour here, population size and gene pool. So I would not be too worried about the fact this is a 7-mark question, because if you write about this first bit here, evaluating how bushfires affect population size, and then about how the introduction of males affects population size, that's probably 4 marks. And then if you talk about how the introduction of males affects the gene pool, and then how bushfires affect the gene pool, then you've got 4 things to talk about. So that's going to be at least sort of 4 or 5 marks worth of your response. And then if you bring in data from your graph, so actual numbers and actual trends, and you talk about things that are related to this, so keywords like genetic drift, and make sure you use that correctly, gene pool, biodiversity, bottleneck effect. So there are lots of terms that you can bring in to talk about in your response that will then elevate your response up to a 7-mark response. So let's have a look at the marking criteria. Pause this and have a read. And then let's apply your knowledge to see how good you think this answer is. Pause it, have a look, compare it to the stimulus and the marking criteria, and see what you would need to add to make it better. So what did you think about this answer? We've got a graph showing a steep decline in the amount of possums being produced until the first introductions of males. In 2007, then there's a steep increase. There's a bushfire and the population dips and more males are introduced and the population increases again. So it shows a clear benefit of the population of possums, which results in an increase in the gene pool compared to before, when the numbers were becoming quite small at only 10. So there's reference to the stimulus there. We've got dates, we've got numbers of populations. It's a little bit generic and it hasn't really addressed both aspects that we're being asked to. So I think you can improve on this response yourself. So work through logically, dealing with each aspect that you're asked to deal with, and make sure you deal with all 4 of those, and then bring in data to support your view. So take a moment to write your response and see how you go.